we showed you the video of Rod Rosenstein talking about these indictments and saying that so far the people that have been charged, they committed crimes and they communicated with people, but those people were unwitting. They didn't know, the Americans, that they were communicating with bots or paid operatives and intelligence officials, things like that. And so Donald Trump is now declaring victory, tweeting, "Russia started their anti-US campaign in 2014, long before I announced that I would run for president. The results of the election were not impacted. The Trump campaign did nothing wrong, no collusion." Which, I mean, if you can say that, that's gotta make you feel way better after all he's been through legally over the past year and a half. Unfortunately, none of it is really true or accurate. So yes, Russia apparently did start their campaign earlier on. And then as soon as you were in the race, they decided that you would apparently be the best way to sow the most discord and disrupt the US as much as possible. The results of the election were not impacted. They don't say that. It says in the indictment that he is not saying that it was impacted, but they're not saying that it wasn't impacted. It just has nothing to do with that. And also saying the Trump campaign did nothing wrong, no collusion. They're not saying that at all. They're saying the people that they're indicting right now were not colluding with the Trump campaign, and it might well be that there was no collusion whatsoever, but they are not in any way speaking to that in these indictments. So both in Donald Trump's tweet, in Sarah Huckabee Sanders' press release, the statement from the White House about this earlier today, they are apparently knowingly lying about the contents of these indictments.
Well, so John, I'm a little bit more charitable than you are on this. But it's not going to appear that way in the beginning. So first of all, on him saying, well, they started in 2014, to John's point about, yeah, but when you got in the race, there's two ways of interpreting their overwhelming support of you. The less generous way of interpreting it is, they thought, good, this guy will be a patsy for us. It'll be, he'll work for us. He's definitely on our side. So let's support Donald Trump. That's one way of interpreting it. Okay, that's not very generous to Trump. So let's take the only other option. They thought, well, this is the one guy who will split apart America the most. He's the most divisive candidate, and he'll get all the Americans to hate each other. So let's support him for that reason. There is no scenario where the Russians are like, let's support Donald Trump because I think he would be great for America. And I just want America to flourish. I want to meddle in their elections so that they become better.
Yeah.
That's not a fact pattern that is one of your choices here.
I think you're right.
Okay,
yeah.
So the two possibilities for Trump are both not good. And then further backing up, John, and this is very important. He says, you see, that proves that the election was not impacted. No, that's not what they said. They said, we can't prove that it was impacted. Now, what is the reality of that? Well, there's no way of proving that the election would have gone one way or another under almost any circumstance. So Ralph Nader got enough votes in 2000 to clearly swing Florida, which clearly would have determined the election. But can you say in a court of law that Ralph Nader cost Gore the election?
No.
No, of course you can't say that, right? And then there are counter arguments to make. Those are political discussions. They're not legal discussions.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be legal is if the Russians got into the actual voting machines in Wisconsin and Michigan and fixed the vote. That would be a legal issue where you impacted the election.
Yeah.
But nobody thought, like, we're really worried that they're getting close to those voting booths, and they did break into the registration system of 21 states, right? And the voter rolls of 21 states, which is really, really dangerous. But they don't have evidence that the Russians manipulated any of the actual votes.
Yeah.
So under almost no circumstance would they have come out and said, oh, we figured it out, this is why Trump won.
Yeah.
And look, the election was so close, there's an excellent argument to be made that of course this made a difference. The Comey announcement that the Hillary Clinton investigation was going to be reopened made a difference. Hillary Clinton sucking as a candidate made a giant difference. Not going to Wisconsin and Michigan made an enormous difference. And the weather made a difference. It was 3 critical states, 78,000 vote difference. That means 39,000 votes in a country of 330 million people, a minuscule amount, made the difference. People going, I ate too much, I'm not going to the polls. That made a difference.
Especially in America.
Yes. So everything impacted the election, yes. But from a legal perspective, nothing impacted the election unless they fixed the vote. Okay, yeah. And so what's my defense of Trump in this case?
Look, I'm less interested in that.
So look, at this point, if you're on Trump's side, they come up with this big indictment but it doesn't have anything to do with the Trump campaign, that's a win. That's definitely a win. So it's not saying that there was no collusion with Trump ever. It's not saying they know that for definitively. It's not saying the case is closed. But for the moment being, this is a pretty good case scenario for Donald Trump, saying, hey, look at that, man. I told you there was no collusion. They found the people who did the meddling and they were not connected to us. That's a win.
Okay, allow me to respond. I agree. I think that in that way, it will certainly be spun that way, and they've sent out all of their minions to try to say that. But it is simultaneously a loss, even with just what we know. And so now I will turn to, if you believe that there was absolutely no collusion, or you don't think that it would matter if there was, that's totally fine. So I will try to appeal to you. And I wanna, if we could bring back up that tweet from Donald Trump. We covered what was in it, but I wanna talk briefly about what's not in it. So what's interesting there is he looked at all of that, 37 pages, which I'm sure he read in detail, about a long-running, multi-year, like one organization had over 100 staff, it's bigger than TYT actually, that had a multi-million-dollar per month budget. They had SEO offices and graphics departments, and they could track the stats of the reach of their social media posts. All of this stuff, all of it going on. There's now 13 individuals, 3 organizations that the Mueller investigation is saying did do all of this, and they described it in extreme detail. And in his response to it, both in that tweet, and I don't think that we have time to read it, but the actual statement from the White House, there is no acknowledgement that I now accept that this actually happened. There is no acknowledgement that they have erred in not doing anything to stop it from happening in the present or in the future. And there's no indication that they will in the future. He is purely interested in whether he is let off in this. But the fact that they are even now trying to manipulate us on the gun issue in the wake of the Parkland shooting, the fact that they've already interfered in a European country's elections, they're undoubtedly targeting progressive candidates in the primaries that are gonna be going on in the next few months. There is nothing in what he is saying that says he takes it seriously or will do anything to stop it from happening in the future. And that might not be a political loss for Donald Trump, but it's certainly a loss for us. It's certainly a loss for progressives and Americans more generally.
So those are 2 separate issues. I agree with you on that. Yeah, and look, would progressives handle it differently? Yes, and would it cost them? Yes. So let's say it was Bernie Sanders who was president, and they came out and they said, yeah, the Russians did meddle in the election, and they largely or overwhelmingly favored Sanders, right? You know that Bernie Sanders would do the right thing. He'd come out and go, it was terrible that they meddled in the election, even though they meddled largely on my behalf, and I'm taking every measure to make sure that never ever happens again. And Trump instead goes, oh, I was right all along. You see that? No, but you were totally wrong that they didn't meddle. You remember what he famously said about it? He said, I talked to Putin, and he denied it. He strongly denied it. Yeah. That is his last statement on it, which is preposterous now that we have a 13-count indictment showing clearly that they did in fact meddle. But in terms of the Trump administration, there right now, as it stands, no evidence that they took part in that meddling. Any way you look at it, they're going to come out and do a little dance. Yeah. And it's going to look something like Eli Manning and his Super Bowl dance. Okay, at least in the ads.
I mean, I think you're probably right. In fact, look, I hope that Donald Trump or someone in his inner circle is watching. Like, I pledge to not be fair to Donald Trump, but this does look really good for him. Maybe they don't have anything. I think it's probably fine for you to let your guard down now.
If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.